AITA for holding my dad's secret that could destroy him? I've been sitting on this story for a while, and even as I type it out, part of me wonders if I should hit post at all. Maybe that's why I'm making it into a video first. Maybe telling strangers on the internet feels safer than telling my friends or family. But if I don't get this out of my system, I'm gonna lose my mind. So buckle up. I, 27M, grew up with a dad who wasn't just my father. He was my hero. He wasn't some quiet, reserved parent who worked a 9 to 5 and came home tired every night. No, my dad was larger than life. He was the kind of man people turned to look at when he walked into a room. The kind of guy who could command a conversation with just a raised eyebrow. People in our small town practically worshipped him. They'd see him driving through Main Street in his old, gleaming Chevy truck and nod with respect, like he was some kind of local legend. He was a legend, at least to me. See, my dad was a self-made man. No college degree, no family fortune, just grit, charisma, and a work ethic that bordered on obsession. He started a landscaping company when he was barely out of high school, and within a decade he'd expanded into construction, rentals, even a car wash. By the time I was a kid, his name was practically on half the businesses in town. And through it all, it was just me and him. My mom died when I was 4. I don't remember much about her, just flashes. The soft smell of her perfume, the warmth of her lap when I'd fall asleep watching cartoons, the way her laughter filled a room like sunlight. Then one day she was gone. Car accident. Instant. I don't remember the funeral, but I remember my dad's face the first time I realized she wasn't coming back. I was sitting on our kitchen floor, clutching my toy truck, sobbing because I wanted mommy. Dad crouched down, his big rough hands trembling as he held me close. He didn't cry in front of me often, but that day he did. From that point on, it was just us. Dad worked insane hours, but he always made time for me in some way. Sometimes it was late at night, him coming home smelling like sawdust and gasoline, collapsing into the recliner while I climbed into his lap. Sometimes it was early mornings, him pouring coffee into a thermos while making me pancakes before school. And every single time, he'd say the same thing. One day, son, all of this will be yours. I didn't know what all of this meant back then, but the way he said it made it sound like some kind of treasure. Like we were kings, and one day he'd pass the crown to me. Fast forward to last year. I'd moved out of our small town, chasing my own dreams in the city, but I still called him every other day. Then one afternoon, I got a call that made my stomach drop. Dad was in the hospital. It wasn't life-threatening, thank God, but it scared the hell out of me. He'd collapsed while working at one of his properties, clutching his chest. Turned out it was a minor heart attack. The kind doctors call a wake-up call. For him, it was a wake-up call. For me, it was like watching a superhero bleed. I drove back home immediately and stayed with him through his recovery. He had to slow down after that. Doctor's orders. That was hard for him. For a man who'd built his entire identity on hustling, being told to take it easy was like a prison sentence. That's when he started talking about getting his affairs in order. It was casual at first, like he was just being practical. He'd say things like, "Son, you ever thought about what happens if I'm not around someday?" Or, "We should probably get a lawyer to write some things down, just in case." I hated those conversations. I didn't want to imagine a world without him, but he seemed determined. Then one day he called me into his study. His study had always been his domain, a room I'd been fascinated by as a kid. The smell of leather and old books, the heavy oak desk covered in papers, and that massive gun safe in the corner felt like stepping into a different world. That day he was sitting behind his desk, leaning back in his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. There was a small, black metal box on the desk. It looked heavy, industrial, with a combination lock on the front. He gestured for me to sit. "Son," he said, his voice lower than usual, "everything you need for your future is in here." He pushed the box toward me. I frowned. "What is it?" "Your future," he repeated. His expression was unreadable. "Don't open it until I tell you to." I laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of dramatic gesture, but his face stayed serious. "Promise me," he said, Not until I say so. I hesitated but nodded. I promise. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded, satisfied. At the time, I thought maybe it was something sentimental. Letters from mom, maybe. Family heirlooms. Important documents. But when I picked it up, I noticed something odd. It was heavy. Much heavier than it should have been for something that size. I asked him about it, but he just smiled faintly and changed the subject. I took it home and tucked it in the back of my closet. Life went back to normal, or at least the new version of normal. Dad was recovering, I was back at work, and that locked box became one of those things I stopped thinking about. Until a few weeks ago. That night, I couldn't sleep. It was one of those nights where your brain just won't shut off. I'd been stressed from work, scrolling through Reddit at 3 a.m., when I suddenly remembered the box. It was like my brain had plucked that memory out of nowhere and shoved it to the front of my mind. I got up, padded over to the closet, and pulled it out. The metal was cold under my hands. I set it on my bed and just stared at it for a while. Why would Dad give me something so mysterious and not want me to open it? Was it some kind of twisted test of character? A way to see if I'd obey him? Or was it something he didn't want anyone else to know about? The curiosity was unbearable. I turned it over in my hands, running my fingers along the smooth surface. There was a combination lock, but no keyhole. I didn't know the combo, obviously. I told myself I wasn't going to open it anyway, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. I put it back, tried to sleep, and failed. The next night, same thing. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about that damn box. And then I did something I'm not proud of. I decided to open it. Now, here's the thing. I'm not exactly some master thief, but I'd watched enough YouTube videos to know that combination locks aren't invincible. And this one wasn't high security, it was the kind you could crack with patience. I waited until I was home alone. I set the box on my kitchen table, took a deep breath, and started working. Click, click, click. After about an hour, I felt the lock give. My heart was pounding as I slowly lifted the lid. Inside, there was a stack of envelopes, thick ones, bound together with a rubber band. And under the envelopes, there was something else, something that made my stomach drop. My dad, a self-made businessman and small-town legend, gave me a heavy, locked box a year ago. He made me promise not to open it until he said so. A few weeks ago, I cracked it open anyway. Inside were thick envelopes and something that immediately set my heart racing. Something I couldn't fully process yet because, before I could even decide what to do, the phone rang. It was him. I'll never forget the sound of his voice that night. I'd grown up idolizing my dad for his strength and composure. He wasn't just my father, he was a rock. The kind of man who faced down financial crises, hurricanes, and even my mom's death without ever showing fear. I'd never once heard him sound scared, until that call. "Son!" His voice was shaky, almost frantic. "That box I gave you, I need it back, right now." I froze, my hands still resting on the edge of the open lid. "Dad? What's going on?" "Don't open it," he said quickly, his voice cracking like he'd been running. "Just bring it to me. Do you hear me? Don't open it. Don't even look inside. Get it out of your house." Something in me twisted. His voice didn't just sound scared, it sounded terrified. That set off every alarm in my head. "Why?" I asked. "What's in it? What's going on?" "You don't understand," he said, almost whispering now. "It's not safe with you. Please, please just bring it to me." He was pleading. My dad never pleaded. I told him I would, and he hung up. But I didn't leave. That night, I sat on the couch with the box in front of me, staring at it like it was radioactive. His panic had done something to me. It hadn't calmed me down, hadn't convinced me to leave it alone. It had the opposite effect. I couldn't stop thinking, why would he be this scared over a box of papers? And if it wasn't safe with me, safe from what? I tried to sleep, but every creak in my apartment sounded like someone breaking in. Every car door slamming outside made me flinch. Eventually, curiosity won. I told myself I'd just peek inside. I went back to my kitchen table, where the box sat like a silent threat. My hands were shaking as I peeled back the envelopes and started digging through the contents. The first thing I saw were passports, at least half a dozen of them, all with my dad's photo, but not a single one had his real name. Every single passport had a different name, a different country of origin. Some of the names were completely foreign, others vaguely American, but none of them were him. I flipped through them, my stomach sinking. Each had stamps from countries I didn't even know he'd been to: Russia, Argentina, Morocco, Switzerland, places he'd never mentioned. Underneath the passports were stacks of documents. Some were property deeds, some were business contracts, and some were letters, official-looking ones, printed on letterhead with government seals. I didn't recognize most of the names, but a few made me stop cold. They were people I'd seen in the news. One document referenced a tech CEO who had been all over the headlines last year for a massive scandal. Another had the name of a politician who'd retired suddenly after a corruption probe. And then there was a black notebook. It looked old. Worn leather cover, yellowed pages. The writing inside was in small, tight handwriting. Coded numbers, dates, initials, and names. And not just any names. Names I recognized. A journalist who'd gone missing in Europe. A local businessman who'd died in an accident last year. A celebrity whose overdose had been front-page news. All of their names were here. Next to them were strings of numbers and foreign words I didn't understand. I felt like my blood had turned to ice. My dad wasn't just a small-town businessman. He was involved in something much, much darker. I sat there for what felt like hours, flipping through the notebook, reading names I'd only ever heard on the news. Some of them had stars or check marks next to them. Some had dates that matched major headlines. At one point, I had to put the book down because my hands were shaking so hard I couldn't hold it steady. That's when I heard a car outside. My apartment is in a quiet area. Late at night, there's usually no traffic. But I heard the slow roll of tires, like someone creeping past. I froze, peeking through the blinds. A black SUV sat idling across the street. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a neighbor's guest. Maybe it was just some random guy. But after a minute, the SUV slowly pulled forward, circled the block, and came back. That's when I grabbed the box, shoved everything back inside, and locked it again. My dad's words were echoing in my head. "It's not safe with you." I wanted to call him back, but what was I supposed to say? "Hey, Dad, I just ignored your instructions, opened the box, and now I think someone's watching my apartment?" No, I didn't want him to know I'd looked inside. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, the SUV was gone, but my nerves were shot. I decided to drive the box back to my dad that day, but a small part of me wanted to stall, to learn more. I couldn't stop thinking about the passports, the documents, the notebook. Who was my father? When I got to his house, he was pacing in the driveway. He looked exhausted, older than I'd ever seen him. "Do you have it?" he asked, voice hoarse. I nodded, handing it over. He snatched it like it was a lifeline and hugged it to his chest. His hands were trembling. "Dad," I said carefully, "what's going on? Why did you give me this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he put the box under his arm, grabbed my shoulder, and said, "Listen to me. If anyone comes asking about this, you don't know anything. You never saw it. Dad, promise me." His eyes were sharp, urgent. "I promise," I said, though I didn't mean it. He studied me for a moment, then nodded, and without another word, he went inside. That should have been the end of it. But something was wrong. I couldn't shake the image of that notebook, those names, those dates, and the way my dad had looked, paranoid, exhausted, like he'd been carrying a secret for decades. For the next few days, I couldn't focus on anything. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. Every time I passed a stranger on the street, I wondered if they knew something. And then, things got worse. 2 nights later, I was leaving work when I noticed someone following me. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. But every turn I made, every crosswalk I took, they were behind me. Dark clothes, hoodie up, face shadowed. I ducked into a coffee shop to see if they'd pass by. They didn't. They stood across the street, staring right at me. That's when I knew. Whatever my dad was involved in, I was now a part of it. I went home and locked every window, every door. I barely slept, clutching a baseball bat and checking the peephole every half hour. The next morning, I drove to my dad's place. I needed answers. But when I got there, something was off. The front door was slightly open. I stepped inside, calling his name. The house was quiet, too quiet. And then I saw it, the box. It was sitting on the kitchen table, unlocked, empty. That's when I realized my dad was gone, and so was everything inside that box. If you haven't read the first 2 parts, here's the lightning-fast recap. My dad isn't who I thought he was. He spent my whole life building this reputation as a self-made businessman, a local legend, but a locked box he gave me blew that image to pieces. Inside were multiple passports under different names, documents linking him to high-profile scandals, and a black notebook filled with coded numbers, names, and dates. Some of those names belonged to missing journalists, disgraced politicians, even celebrities who overdosed. After a terrifying phone call from him begging me to return the box, I gave it back. But when I went to his house, I found it empty and unlocked, and my dad was gone. That was 2 nights ago. This morning, I decided to confront him. I didn't sleep at all. It's hard to explain what happens to your brain when you stumble into something you were never meant to see. The world doesn't look the same anymore. Every passing car feels like a threat. Every shadow looks like a silhouette. And every innocent question you get asked, even by a barista or coworker, feels loaded, like maybe they already know what you've done. So by the time the sun rose, I was running on adrenaline, cheap coffee, and the kind of paranoia that makes your heart race just from hearing a neighbor's door slam. I texted Dad first. Nothing. Called him. Straight to voicemail. Finally, I drove to his house again. This time, his truck was in the driveway. I parked across the street and sat there for a minute, watching the house like I was about to raid a drug dealer's place instead of visiting my own father. Curtains drawn. No movement. When I finally went up and knocked, he opened the door almost immediately, like he'd been standing on the other side waiting for me. The man who answered didn't look like the dad I knew. His hair was disheveled, and his clothes were wrinkled like he'd slept in them. He looked thinner, paler, like he'd aged 10 years in 2 days. But what struck me most was his eyes. My dad has always had this confidence about him, this unshakable sense of control. He could command a boardroom or silence a room of angry customers with nothing but his gaze. Now, his eyes darted nervously past me, scanning the street, like he was expecting a sniper to take him out any second. "Get inside," he said, pulling me in by the arm and shutting the door behind me. I didn't waste time. "Dad," I said, my voice trembling despite myself. "We need to talk. About the box." He froze mid-step. I swear, in that moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Anger, fear, resignation, all at once. "What about it?" His tone was low, dangerous. "I saw what was inside," I said. "I didn't go through everything, but I know. About the passports, the documents, the notebook." Silence. He turned slowly, his expression hardening. "You went through it?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I swallowed. "And I think I deserve to know what the hell is going on." For a long moment, he just stared at me. His hand flexed at his side like he was holding back from grabbing something. Maybe my shoulders, maybe a weapon. Then, finally, he sighed. "You should have never opened it." We sat at the kitchen table. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he poured himself a glass of whiskey, his hands trembling slightly, and stared at the liquid like it held all the answers. "I told you not to open that box for a reason," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "You don't know what you've gotten yourself into." "I know you're not just a businessman," I said. "I know that notebook has names, important names, and that you're scared because someone knows I had it." That made him look up sharply. His eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said. "And if you value your life, you'll stop asking questions right now." Hearing those words from my dad, the man I'd idolized my whole life, made my stomach drop. Value my life? I repeated. Dad, what is this? Who are you protecting? Yourself? Me? Both of us? He set the glass down, exhaled through his nose, and finally spoke the truth. Everything I built, all these businesses, the reputation I worked for, it wasn't entirely legal. He said it flatly, like he was reading off a grocery list. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. What do you mean, not legal? I asked cautiously. He rubbed his face. It started small. Deals with the wrong people. Money moving around that shouldn't have been. Then favors. Information. Eventually, it wasn't about making money anymore. It was about survival. I stared at him, stunned. That notebook you saw? He continued. That's leverage. Evidence. Dirt on powerful people who could destroy me, or anyone. People you know, son. People whose names are on the news, in headlines. That book is the only reason I'm still alive. I sat there in shock, trying to process it. You trusted me with it? I said slowly. He nodded. Because no one would suspect you. You're clean. You've stayed out of this world. I thought you'd be the safest person to hold it. I was wrong. The weight of that statement hung between us. Why? I asked. Why now? Why is it suddenly not safe? His eyes met mine, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in them. Because they know, he said. Someone knows you had it, and if they think you've read it. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Here's the thing about growing up with a dad like mine. You spend your whole life in his shadow. He's the big man, the success story, the one everyone looks up to. Meanwhile, I've been scraping by, renting a crappy apartment, working a job I hate, living paycheck to paycheck. So while I sat there listening to him explain this insane double life, another thought crept into my mind. A dark one. If this notebook was his safety net, maybe it could be mine too. I can't just give it back, I said finally. His head snapped up. What? Think about it, Dad. You've been sitting on a fortune your whole life while I've been struggling. You told me one day everything would be mine. Maybe this is my way of finally having some power. His face went pale. Son, he said quietly, you have no idea what you're doing. I know enough, I said, my voice shaking. You've been using this notebook to control people, right? To keep yourself safe? Maybe I should have that kind of power now. Maybe I deserve it. The silence in that kitchen was deafening. Then he spoke, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. You think that book is power? That book is a target. Holding it doesn't make you safe. It makes you next. I didn't back down. Then teach me, I said. If I'm next, teach me how to survive. He slammed his glass down so hard the whiskey sloshed over the rim. This isn't a game, he snapped. You're playing with people who make me look like a saint. That book isn't leverage anymore. It's a death sentence. And you, he jabbed a finger at me. You are in way over your head. I'd never seen him like this. Not when Mom died, not during the worst financial crises. This wasn't the cool, collected man I grew up with. This was someone who knew he'd lost control of something far bigger than himself. And that scared me more than anything. I sat there, heart pounding, realizing I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just his son. I wasn't just some kid trying to impress his father. I was a liability. We stared at each other for what felt like forever. Then he leaned back, rubbed his temples, and said quietly, You need to disappear for a while. What? I'll handle this. But you need to leave. Tonight. Don't go home. Don't call anyone. Don't use your cards. Cash only. My pulse spiked. Why? What's happening? His eyes were haunted. Because if they know about you, they're already coming. That was the moment it all sank in. This wasn't just some family drama or business issue. This was life or death. And yet, even as my hands shook, even as my chest tightened with panic, a tiny voice in the back of my head whispered, You're not giving up that book. Not yet. Because now I wasn't just scared. I was curious, and curiosity is dangerous. If you haven't read the earlier parts, here's the quick recap. My dad isn't just a self-made businessman. He's been playing a dangerous game for decades, building his fortune not just with hard work but with leverage. The black notebook I found in his locked box is not just some diary. It's a death sentence. Inside are names, dates, coded numbers, and information about powerful people. People who stay too. My phone started glitching. At first, it was little things. Dropped calls, random beeps, texts that wouldn't send. Then my screen froze while I was texting a friend for almost a full minute. That's when it hit me. Someone was tapping my phone. That thought alone was enough to send me spiraling. If they could watch my phone, they could track me. If they could track me, they could get to me anytime they wanted. I threw my phone into a drawer and powered it off. I didn't even want to look at it. Day 3. That's when I got the text. I turned my phone back on briefly to check work emails. And right there, in my notifications, was a single message from an unknown number. Hand it over, or you won't like what happens. No emojis, no signature, just that. I sat frozen on my couch, staring at it. My hands went cold. They knew I had the notebook, and now they weren't watching. They were warning. I tried calling my dad, but he didn't answer. I left a voicemail, my voice shaking. Dad, call me. Please, I'm scared. No response. That night, I pushed my dresser against the door and slept with the baseball bat across my lap. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. I thought I heard someone jiggling the lock around 2 a.m., but when I crept to the door and peered through the peephole, nobody was there. It was like being hunted by a ghost. Day 4, I thought about going to the police, but then I thought about the notebook, about the names in it, about the powerful people it exposed. If my dad didn't trust the cops, why should I? For all I knew, half the precinct was on someone's payroll. I realized I was completely alone. That night, I sat on my bed with the notebook spread out in front of me, flipping through it with trembling hands. I didn't understand most of it, the codes, the numbers, but the pattern was obvious. Each name was tied to something. Some had initials next to them. Some had check marks. Some had what looked like amounts of money. But the dates terrified me. Every name matched a headline. Every headline was a tragedy, a scandal, or a mysterious disappearance. And I recognized one name that made me almost drop the book entirely. A senator. One who died last year in a plane crash. A plane crash that had been called a freak mechanical failure. But next to his name was a symbol I didn't understand. A star circled in red. Day 5. I knew I couldn't just sit there waiting to die. I made a decision. If they were going to come for me, I wasn't going to make it easy. So I did something risky. I scanned everything. The documents, the notebook, the passports. Every single page. Then I uploaded it all to a secure drive, encrypted it, and set up a dead man's switch. If I didn't log in at least once a day, those files would be sent to every journalist I could think of. It wasn't much, but it was the only leverage I had. The act of scanning everything was nerve-wracking. I kept imagining that SUV's tinted windows, some faceless man with a headset watching me through binoculars, waiting for me to slip. Every few minutes, I'd rush to the window, convinced I'd see someone coming up the stairs. By the time I was done, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely type my password. But it was done. If they touched me, the world would know everything. Day 6, I finally called my dad. He answered this time. Dad, I said, my voice tight. I'm not giving the notebook back. There was a long silence on the other end. Son, he said finally, listen to me carefully. You think that book is keeping you safe, but all it's done is paint a target on your back. I've made copies, I said quickly. If anything happens to me, the files will go public. Jesus Christ, he muttered, his voice shaking with anger. You don't understand how this works. I understand enough, I said. As long as I hold onto the original, they won't risk hurting me. They'll want to negotiate. There was another long pause. Then he said something that sent a chill down my spine. They won't negotiate. They'll make it look like you never existed. Those words stuck in my head like a splinter. I hung up after that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that my dad wasn't exaggerating. This wasn't a threat from some petty criminals. This was something much bigger. Day 7. I haven't left my apartment in 2 days. I've barely eaten. I keep the baseball bat by my bed, a kitchen knife in the drawer by the door, and my blinds drawn tight. I'm living like a fugitive in my own home, but something inside me has shifted. The fear is still there, but it's mixed with something else now. Anger. Anger at my dad for dragging me into this. Anger at myself for opening that box. And most of all, anger at whoever these people are, thinking they can threaten me into silence. They want the notebook? They can come and get it. That night, I dreamed I was being followed down a dark alley, footsteps echoing behind me, closer and closer. I turned around, and all I saw was a faceless man in a black suit. When I woke up, it wasn't the dream that scared me. It was the sound of someone knocking on my door. If you're just joining, here's the lightning recap. My dad, a small-town legend, wasn't just a self-made businessman. He was playing a game with some of the most powerful and dangerous people alive. That locked box he gave me, it wasn't sentimental. It held leverage, documents, fake passports, coded records, and a black notebook tying high-profile names to disappearances, scandals, and worse. When I opened it, I crossed a line I didn't even know existed. Since then, I've been stalked, threatened, and hunted. My dad begged me to give it back. I refused, and now I don't even know if he's alive, because 2 nights ago everything changed. The bang at my door. It was around midnight when it happened. I was lying in bed, scrolling Reddit, trying to distract myself from the gnawing paranoia that had become my life. I'd gotten used to the sound of the occasional car outside, the creak of my old apartment building settling. But this wasn't that. This was a bang, not a knock. Not someone accidentally bumping into the door. A loud, deliberate bang. I jumped up, heart-pounding, baseball bat in hand. I held my breath, waiting for the sound of footsteps, voices, anything. Nothing. Just silence. Then I saw it. A small, plain white envelope, halfway slipped under my door. I crouched down slowly, adrenaline roaring in my ears, and picked it up. There was no writing on it. No name, no address. I opened it. Inside was a single photo of me, sleeping. My entire body went cold. It was my bedroom, my sheets, my lamp glowing dimly in the background. Someone had been in my apartment while I slept. Watching me, I backed into the corner of the room, clutching the bat like it was a lifeline, scanning every shadow. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Every noise outside my door made me jump. I kept the lights on until sunrise. That was my breaking point, the call. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was done playing games. I picked up my phone and called my dad. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped it. When the line clicked, I didn't even wait for him to speak. "Dad," I said, my voice hoarse, "I'm ready to give it back. I'll do whatever you want. Please, But the voice on the other end wasn't his. It was calm, cold. A man's voice. "Your father's gone," he said smoothly. "You work for us now." My breath caught in my throat. What? Where is he? Who are you? The voice chuckled softly, like I just said something naive. "Doesn't matter who I am," he said. "What matters is this: you have something very valuable. And now you're going to keep it safe. For us." My hands were slick with sweat. "What do you mean? What did you do to him?" There was a pause. Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone, my chest tight, panic clawing at me. My dad, gone, just like that. And now I was what? Their employee? Their hostage? I didn't know. But I knew one thing. I was in too deep to get out. The transfer. The SUV that had been parked outside my apartment for days vanished the next morning. No one followed me when I went to grab coffee. No one lingered outside my door. For the first time in a week, it felt like I could breathe. That feeling didn't last long. because when I checked my bank account later that day, I froze. There was a wire transfer for $500,000. $500,000. No explanation. No sender information I could trace. Just there. I didn't touch it. I didn't even tell anyone, because I knew what it meant. That wasn't a gift. That was a leash. The realization. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the black notebook in front of me. My hands hovered over it like it was a live grenade. A week ago, I'd thought of it as leverage, a bargaining chip, power. Now I understood the truth. It wasn't leverage. It was chains. It was proof that I wasn't just a random guy who made a stupid mistake by opening his dad's box. I was someone they'd decided to keep alive, not because they couldn't kill